Hi students. This week in Promotional Culture, we're going to talk about promotion and gender. But we're not going to talk about it in the way that you might automatically think. We're not going to talk about the sexualization and the objectification of women's bodies. We're not going to talk about the fact that advertising has historically very much relied on stereotypes of women to keep women suppressed and keep them in the kitchen and keep them down. And subservient to men. And we're not going to talk about, how women's bodies are constantly sexualized for advertising purposes and that sex sells. That's kind of, a basic approach to advertising. What we really want to talk about today is the post-feminist woman and how empowerment and feminism has been sold back to women in a new way. So in order to do this, we need to first talk about what is post-feminism, and then we're going to talk about some movements in the industry around entitled feminism and commodity feminism. And we're going to actually think about what implications does that have for women nowadays working in advertising. So first, let's tackle post-feminism. Now, feminism as a concept has gone through many phases, and we're not here to debate whether or not, if you consider yourself a feminist or whether feminism is the right word or anything related to your personal values. But what we are concerned about is the fact that feminism as a concept has kind of moved on. And we have seen that feminism as a concept has also become extremely popular, especially in the last 5 or 10 years. People like Beyonce have really taken on the word and have really used it a lot in their art. Celebrities are, talking about how they're feminists, and it's become a really important concept that is very much in the public domain. And as a result, brands have sort of observed this and have noticed that feminism is having its day and that this offers an opportunity. What post-feminism is really, it's about this sort of phase where we've kind of gone past this idea that feminism is sort of man-hating or that you have to be masculine and you have to avoid being a woman. It's about really embracing femininity and feminine identities. And it's about really combining a lot of aspects of the feminine, but in a kind of more empowered way. But in the Lazar piece, and this is the piece I'm going to interrogate most today, entitled To Consume Post-Feminist Femininity and a Culture of Post-Critique, she talks about how post-feminism really actually ends up recycling very old gendered stereotypes, but with a twist. And so it's quite frivolous and it's quite sort of empty, but at the same time, it indexes a feminist consciousness. So it's actually quite strong and quite empowered, and it's meant to be bold, and yet it's still very much pink. So let's talk about what that actually means, because she talks about this idea of entitled feminism. Now, we have been told that nowadays women basically have it all. The patriarchy has ended, women have full equality, and that as a result, women are leading fully empowered lives. They can do it all, they have it all, and as a result, it's their time to sort of shine, and it's our time to celebrate them. Well, brands have really sort of picked up on this idea, and they're thinking, well, how do we celebrate women? Well, the best way to get them to celebrate themselves is to get them to consume. So you end up having a lot of advertising that looks like this, for example, that showcases the fact that, women really are supposed to have it all. We've kind of made it, You eat a coffee for lunch, you follow through on your follow-through, sleep deprivation is your drug of choice, you might be a doer. Woman as a hardworking, relentless out there in the world, getting hers, getting what she's after. And then you have the ads, turning around like this. We've never met a mom who wasn't working. We live where you live. So again, advertisers and brands have really picked up on this idea that women are working, women are busy, they've got lives, And the best way to reach them is to sort of appeal to that nature of, we get it. You're hardworking. Here's a solution. Buy our stuff. And what that ends up being is that women's empowerment then ends up turning into a bit of a sales opportunity where it's your opportunity to spoil yourself. And we see this all the time. It's actually been going on a very long time. Of course, everybody knows one of the biggest campaigns, Because You're Worth It. L'Oreal has always kind of hung its brand identity on this, oh, you work so hard, you're such a dedicated woman, you've got it all, but you need a little something, you need a little treat, you're worth it, go treat yourself to some new makeup. But what's happened in the last sort of 10 years or so is that feminism has become the selling point, right? So it actually is now a consumer power. And we see this is an ad, for example, for a gym line, Equinox. And, I can't think of a better example of an ad that is co-opting feminism and co-opting activism as it used to be, as it was a way to fight the patriarchy, it was a way to get women's rights, it was a way to fight for equality. Now it's just a reason to go to the gym and get a body like that. Anyway, feminism is the new consumer power. And so what you end up having is this huge trend towards embracing and celebrating all things femininity. So you've got post-feminist pink, which about 4 or 5 years ago was like the hottest color on the market, where you had major makeup brands talking about this post-feminist pink. It's the most feminine color statement, twisted with punkish freedom. It sets a new vision for French irreverence. It's all breathless and exciting, and it's meant to really help women embrace their most feminine nature by buying more makeup. And because it's pink, it's relevant. And basically what this is it's really a way to just target women who know what they want, but who can frankly get it at any cost and are willing to pay for, that feminist, post-punk feminist ideology. And then we also have what's called femvertising, right? This idea that brands are embracing everything that it is to be a woman, and this concept of marketplace feminism, right? So what they're doing is they're hijacking feminist language, and they're co-opting the ideals of feminism around activism and struggle and fight and freedom and independence and strength. And they're turning that into an opportunity to buy more underwear. And so, it's all about feminism, but it's actually just paying service to basic capitalism at the end of the day, and nothing is sacred. This poster, many of you would have seen, it's Rosie the Riveter, and it was an advertising poster during the World War II, and it was meant as a way of getting women back into the workforce, because all the men were away at war fighting, and they needed women to go into the manufacturing plants and the factories and actually build the ammunitions and keep the economy going. Women had never worked before. And so this poster became iconic as a way of saying, women, you can do the same job men can do. Get back to work, build the economy, prop up our nation. And it became a symbol of women's liberation and women's strength and women's freedom. And now the poster itself is an absolute iconic poster for the feminist cause. And it is also used to sell deep cleaning products for women who are in the home and having to stay there. And so nothing is sacred from this sort of commodity feminism, where basically feminism is now just another thing that can be bought and sold and entice you to buy products such as a deep clean, steam clean. We also have major trends in feminism. So a few years ago, this t-shirt was all the rage amongst celebrities. And that's what I was saying. Beyonce and celebrities, etc., are really going out and carrying the banner of feminism and saying, feminism is nothing to be avoided. It's something that we should all be. And this was sort of a very popular fashion statement a couple of years ago, making sure that all women should have the right to label themselves feminists, and that all women should be able to stand up against the patriarchy, as long as they could afford a t-shirt that costs $700. So this is sort of the problem, is that we have this idea of feminism being co-opted into something that is largely inaccessible, and largely still very much about money and capitalism, and very much about getting people to buy things, buy expensive makeup, buy yourself a spa treatment, buy yourself a pampering, buy yourself an extravagantly expensive t-shirt to claim to the world how much a feminist you are. This is how ridiculous it's gotten. There are some brands who are doing it right. And many brands have tried to shift the focus. They're working with the way that the world has changed, and the way that women's roles have changed. And they're trying to advertise in a way that is a bit more sensitive and a bit more appealing and a bit more, yes, empowering to women. So the This Girl Can campaign, getting women back into fitness, has always been quite inspiring and inclusive, and a bit real about what women's struggles are in actually taking on exercise. And ads like this, where hashtag strength has no gender, it's still for kitchen towel, but it's a nice sort of diverse ad that shows women being strong and using strong kitchen towel. Keds, it's not a running shoe, it's a run the world shoe. Again, that idea that women are out in front, and that's a nice enough ad. And I like this one. We have to make our shoulders strong enough for somebody else to stand on. Hashtag be more human. And instead of using a model, they're using an actor, activist, and writer as someone is representing their brand for Reebok. So it can be done well. It can be done right. I'm going to post a video that shows you some women at a conference talking about advertising to women and how we need to be more sensitive. We can't just hit it over the head and paint something pink and expect it to sell to empowered women. That's the easy way out. And we have to remember that, at the end of the day, entitlement is still very much intact in the advertising industry. And this quote from Lazar really sums it up so clearly, where she says, feminine entitlement is really the entitlement to consume unreservedly. The assumption that a lifestyle based on commodity consumption is universally shared and freely accessible to all, when in fact it's a luxury that many can't afford. Rather, it's the prerogative of privileged middle-class women who have the means to access retail pleasures and the luxury to focus self-absorbedly on themselves. What she's saying here is that at the end of the day, this post-feminist ideology in promotional culture, where it's like, you go girl, you've made it, you can have anything you want, you've got all the rights and freedoms, now take your money and go buy yourself some shit, is actually very problematic, because it's very exclusive and does not include the wider population of women who actually can't afford to just buy themselves something, or can't afford to just pamper themselves with luxury. And promotional culture is very dangerous in depicting women in this way. A couple of key takeaways. The use of gender has gender's always been used in advertising. Now, in more simplistic times, and still now, in a very basic way, women's bodies are objectified, they are sexualized, women's places are maintained as being very narrowly focused on the home and family. And that hasn't changed a lot. But what has changed is this sort of sensibility that women can still be very much used in advertising. Now, women absolutely represent massive buying power. And so this is why advertisers have shifted their focus to focus on the empowered woman as someone who can now spend money on their products. So the rise of feminism and women's purchasing power has proved to be a very enticing opportunity for brands. They don't want to let it go, because they do recognize that women are the ones holding the purse strings and that they need to appeal to them. And old basic tropes of objectification and sexualization no longer work. So what are they going to use? empowerment. So selling empowerment back to women is very lucrative, but it's also really easy to do badly. And as I said earlier, slapping pink on something and saying, you go girl, and using that to sell yogurt is not necessarily appropriate. And that's where we have something called commodified feminism, where feminism, the empowerment of women, the equal rights of women, has now become something that is simply up as a product that can be bought and sold. And so if you're going to work in this field, and if you're going to work with women's products, or if you're going to target women in your advertising, you really have to read the room. You really have to think about how women are going to perceive this message. And you really have to understand the bigger context about what kind of message that you're sending when you're thinking about using empowerment as an advertising tool, as a promotional tool. Consider the consequences and consider the background. Consider how it might be taken. And try not to be tone deaf in your efforts. That's just our short lecture for today. I look forward to our discussion in class.